Greetings and good day. Welcome to another 4-H Fridays hosted by the North Central 4-H program leaders. We're so very happy to gather together today talking about a really critical issue regarding the mental and emotional health of adolescents and children during this time of COVID. And we're pleased to have representatives from Ohio State, Purdue, as well as the University of Illinois sharing with us today about best practices that they're putting into practice going forward. And so as the structure is today, we'll have about 10 minutes for each presenter to share kind of a lightning talk kind of approach, and then share those slides. And so we'd encourage all of our participants, as you come on, go ahead and put your state abbreviation before your name. That gives us an opportunity to hear and see kind of the vast diversity of folks who are a part of our conversation today. So it asks you to be a part of that. And then secondly, think about as you're going through, feel free to use the chat box to either write down comments or questions that you might have. What we're going to do is we're going to go through all three of our presenters first, kind of just in sequence, and then we're going to have an opportunity for us to break out into discussion rooms after that, where you can follow up on some of those questions. And then as time is allotted, we'll have some time to reconvene everybody back close to the top of the hour. Where we'll be able to maybe field some of those questions that you felt either came up in the midst of your discussion groups or felt like hadn't been answered as we went through the presentation. So again, thanks for everybody being here today. Thanks for your continued vigilance to give leadership locally with the 4-H program and extension work, helping us continue to do the best we can to bring the best we can to our local communities going forward. So with that, I'm going to pause, and once again, just thank you all. Just go ahead and type your name, rename yourself with your Kansas, or like in mine, Kansas Wade Weber, just as a quick way for us to be hospitable to each other going forward. So with that, we're going to go ahead and I'll yield the floor to, of course, Jamie's out of her seat for the moment. I'm good about the timing, so.
I just wanted to grab my, there we go.
Yeah, no worries, no problem. So glad to have you join us. And so Amy, if you can, or Amy, if you can introduce yourself briefly, and, and then we'll move forward together. So thanks so much.
Sounds great. So I am technology challenged. My name is Jamie Delafield, and I am with Ohio State University, and I am one of the co-authors of the Your Thoughts Matter 4-H project book. And so Amanda Rains is my other co-author, and she is our technology person. So I'm going to try to navigate this as best as I can for you all. I'm going to share my screen. Can y'all see that?
Hello?
I can.
Okay, so there. So I wanted to grab my little clicker so that I made sure that I was able to advance my slides because, you know, technology and fun. So what I'm going to do is very quickly do an overview for you all of the 4-H project book, just in case you're not familiar with it. And then what I'm going to do is talk to you about the spin club that we implemented. And I did set myself a little timer. I like to talk a lot, and so I will do my best to keep at our 10 minutes. So I have a little timer at this side. So just a little bit about the Your Thoughts Matter project book. It was published in 2018. It was designed for 4-Hers in grades 7 through 12 as a standalone project. It has been nationally peer-reviewed, and it is sold on shop4h.org. In the first year, over 650 4-H members completed the project. We have had more than that as we have gone on. And it recently won 2 national awards, one from NEAFCS. I'm an FCS educator, a Family and Consumer Sciences educator, and Amanda Rains, our co-author, is a 4-H youth development professional. So we also won your NAE 4-H YDP National Educational Peace Award. So we're very, very proud of this work and the different ways that it can be used. So why did this book come about? I began an extension in 2015, October of 2015, and very quickly realized from my past work that we weren't talking a lot in our health world about mental health. We were doing a lot of talking about nutrition. We were doing a lot of talk about sun safety, we were talking about healthy finances, but we weren't doing a lot of talk about emotional health and mental health. And I'm a person who lives with anxiety. I'm going to be 48 in a couple of weeks and was diagnosed in my early 30s. And I realized really quickly as I began to try to advocate for myself and what I was experiencing that there was a lot of misconception and a lot of hard things to do when it came to explaining to people how sometimes my illness was debilitating. So what do we know? We know that 1 in 4 or 5 American adolescents has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And we know this, and that depends on which statistics you use, but 1 in 5 is a good common amount. We also know that according to youth.gov, 49.5% in a 2010 report of US adolescents met the criteria for a mental health disorder. That's a lot of the students that we're working with, whether it's our 4-Hers, whether it's our family members, whether it's the friends of kids that we know. So the prevalence is typically in mood disorders, then anxiety, and then behavior disorders. So we know that it's very, very common. So we should talk about it, because if my brain is not working properly, how can I do well with any of the other things that I'm trying to teach? So just important for us to do, as you all know, which is why we're here. So in the project book, there are different project areas. And so we have 4 project areas. The project areas are what is mental health, what mental health disorders, stigma, and self-help and resources. And so I'm just going to kind of go through. In each section, we work through some definitions. We work through statistics, and you can kind of see in this one that we share with the students the statistics from youth.gov, and then we encourage them to go and take a look at how frequent it is in their state or their county. So we're encouraging them to go to Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We're encouraging them to go call their county health department, to go to the ODH website, and just the behavioral health websites that we have, just to figure out, what is it like in their own community. We have an interview portion where we talk about how people are affected when somebody that they know lives with a mental illness. And so what can they do to help somebody? So we encourage them to have a broad view of what a mental health person looks like. Then we give in every section a chance for them to talk it over, to describe things, to reflect, to generalize, and then to apply what they've learned, right? That's the whole point of youth development, is making change. We want to see behavior change. So in the anxiety section, when we talk about that, we give them something to do. Give a worry journal. So let's talk about what's worried you, and then go back and figure out, hey, is this consistent? Am I noticing that before this happens, I'm starting to worry? So an example of this would be, every time I have to go talk to somebody, or before I have a test, or before I have this, I find that I'm getting nervous, and we write it down so that we can start to learn to communicate about that. For depression, we give them some scenarios. Let's talk about whether you think somebody might be experiencing depression, or whether they might be experiencing typical teenage adolescence, right? We know that hormones are all over the place during puberty, and that our brains aren't fully developed until they're 25. Every section then has a more challenges, which is really cool. So in this one, we encouraged them to go to their school and get permission to leave positive notes in the bathroom or in the hallway and do different things. In the section about what do I say, we're going to talk about checking ourselves and checking our own language, which is really an interesting thing to do, because a lot of us say things, and if you take a look down at here on the screen, we'll say things like the weather is so bipolar, or I'm going crazy, or if I don't do well on this test, I'm just going to kill myself. Well, what do we do if somebody says that? And how should we respond? We also talk about what the world says. So what media messages are we seeing? And so we encourage the kids to watch a few movies and do things with that. The next thing that we talk about is strength. What does it look like to have resilience? And how do different things respond? All of us respond differently to different scenarios. And so what does that look like? We then give them places where they have a glossary, where they have different places to look for guidance, which is very important. And then the most important piece, right, is that our project book is aligned with the National Health Education Standards, which is very, very helpful. Feedback from some 4-Hers, they love this project book. We've had 4-Hers sold t-shirts to raise awareness. We have them giving demonstrations in their communities or using this project for public speaking in their schools. And overall, they said that it increased their knowledge of mental health. So we've got, with the Spin Club idea, right, lots of different partnership opportunities. So can you bring 6 weeks of learning to your gatekeepers and your mental health clubs? Can you do your mental health and recovery service boards, local schools? And so when we decided to implement this Spin Club over this COVID-19 time, what was really, really interesting overall was that we were able to get people from across the country together to talk about this. And I know that Susan is on the call today, and she was an adult who sat in and participated in our group. And so we put out a call and an invitation for anybody who was interested in taking this project to be a part of it. We were lucky enough that Ohio offered a few project books for free download during the time of COVID, and this was one of those. So everybody was able to access the book. So what do you need to do if you're going to do a spin club? You're going to choose the 6 weeks and the time that you're going to meet. You're going to have some sort of registration. You're going to make sure that everybody has access to the project book, and then you're going to align adult volunteers. We found that we had 6 to 8 adult volunteers who were part of our 4-H network. They were 4-H professionals or 4-H volunteers who had experienced this book before, and they helped us to lead the breakout rooms that we accessed a lot. So we set ground rules, and we went over these ground rules every single week. We made sure that people knew to be respectful, that we all came from different places and had different values and different ideas, so our cultures were different. What could we do to be non-judgmental? We attempted to teach them about person first language to use that. We encouraged them to get up, move around. One kid golfed during our spin club one week because he could get outside and golf. And so we're like, whatever you need to do to listen and participate, do you. We had an agenda that we shared every day, and then we asked $1 million question in every breakout room to get the kids talking. So if you could go anywhere on vacation in the summer, where would you all go? And I would encourage you all right now to answer that in the chat box. If you had $1 million and could go anywhere, you have no financial worries, where are you going to go and what are you going to do? And so that's always fun to just break the ice. We then talked with them about whatever the topic of the day was. And because of the way the book was laid out, we were able to basically do the book, which was really, really awesome. So this one, we were talking about the differences in anxiety versus typical worry. We all worry, but when does it tip over into a diagnosable illness? And we stressed a lot that it's that 2 to 3 week, you don't feel like yourself, and it's preventing you from living, from laughing and loving. Let's go talk to a doctor. We then talked about self-harm one week, and we spent a lot of time talking to them about how to help a friend who was experiencing self-harm. And I see that I've got 20 seconds left, so I'm going to hurry here. This was some pictures that some of our students were able to do during one of their projects. And that some teachers who we had worked with mental health first aid and the youth mental health first aid class put up in their schools that we worked with, which were really cool. These were the movies that we had them watch. If you have not seen The Soloist, I would encourage that one. I had not seen that one, and I was assigned that for our breakout group. Man, I was in tears. It was really, really good. But the kids watched a movie, and then we spent the majority of the Spin Club in breakout rooms talking about the movies and the way media portrays mental health and what we could do to, be a part of the conversation and to change things and to help to break down stigma that exists. And did we like the way that the movie portrayed it? Was it a positive way or was it a negative way, right? One of the things we know about mental illness is that people think that people who have a mental health problem are violent, but statistics show that the majority of people who have a mental illness are actually the recipients of violence, not the ones actually perpetrating violence. So really interesting conversations to have. We then did a whole activity on resilience, and that was very interesting. I was actually on vacation and missed the demonstration, but we took a hammer to all of these different things to see how they would respond, just like we are. And from what I understand, it was a very interesting week. And then we spent a lot of time on this week with the kids talking to them about what does popular mean? And why is that such a word that gives us all such angst? And that, we really want to talk about how to build friendships and Having one friend is really important at any given time. It's not necessarily about whatever popular is, because all of us are popular at some point. And my guess is that if I asked any of you if you wanted to go back to being a teenager, you'd say absolutely not. That's a difficult time. And so how do we empower our youth? And you're in this work because you want to continue to help build resilience in our teens. So we stressed a lot through the Spin Club. When I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. And the importance of us all working together, and how cool it was to be with 70 people across the state. We had 70 people register for the Spin Club, and we averaged 40 to 50 a week on each of our 6 calls. We always left with a takeaway from everything, gave them resources that they could connect to. We encouraged them to think about their promotional tools and what they were going to do to build out into the community. That's kind of the last culmination right before judging, is we've got a big project that you do. So if you're in a clothing project, you make something. This is what we encourage them to make, some infographics and some different things to help to do education about positive mental health in their communities. And then we worked in breakout groups for them to share those. Again, more reflection questions. Again, we can only be better if we have conversations. Sharing more resources. And then here were our unofficial results. And I apologize again, I'm over just a couple of minutes, but we opened it to everybody. 70 plus youth were registered. We had an average attendance of 40 to 50. We learned not to make assumptions about gender. I am really, really not great with pronouns. And so we made sure that when we had people change their names, they shared their pronouns with us so that we could hopefully try to get them right. We utilized the different connections that we had, and were able to find people from across the country, even people working in Washington, D.C. on the Trevor Project, and people throughout Extension, and different individuals who work, counselors and such, to be part of our interview day, which is really cool, because then it wasn't just local county people that individuals were meeting with, especially when many of us live in rural areas and don't have a counselor except maybe 30 to 45 minutes away. We learned how to offer grace. We were able to find great adults. We are excited for the next Spin Club, because the majority of the teens on the call said they want to be breakout room leaders the next time, which was fantastic. We learned that an hour was not quite enough, but at the same time it was, because it gave us a definitive start and a definitive end. So setting your time is really important. We learned how to utilize breakout rooms, which was really awesome for everyone, and the kids taught us a lot about that. And we learned to give time for the kids to get to know each other, which, you know, they don't want to hear us talk all of the time. So if you have any questions, I've shared these slides with Wade. You can get in contact with Amanda or I. We are very excited to help you build Spin Clubs or use this resource in any way. I know that some states are currently using it. I know Michigan has, and Illinois has been talking with us. So we're here to help you, and are just grateful for this opportunity. And thanks again for the extra few minutes.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it very much. Valuable information, and thank you so much for highlighting that excellent tool. Dr. Casey Mello, I see that you're on. Would you like to introduce briefly your team? Angie, who's going to be sharing with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Introduce a specialist with Purdue Extension, Angie Frost.
Thanks, Casey. As he said, my name is Angie Frost. I'm the Healthy Living Specialist at Indiana 4-H. I'm just going to share my slide here. One second. Technologically challenged occasionally, like other people. And let's see. I want to make sure you see the right screen here. Okay, can you see that slide then? Can you see that, Jamie? I can see you on the screen there. Okay.
Yep, you're on.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing that information. It was super inspiring to see what you were able to do this summer with everything that's going on. Occasionally, I do have internet issues, so if I start getting garbled, somebody give me a heads up so I don't just keep talking along. But I am the Healthy Living Specialist at Purdue, and I also am a registered dietitian. So as I came into my role, we were really focused on nutrition and physical activity. As Jamie said, that's what we focused on the most. And yet I knew that there was a need for some additional social emotional tools. I kept hearing that from adults, and I started hearing it from youth. So one of the things that we started looking at was how can we implement this program with our teens as teachers? And so that is a program where we bring groups of kids together for a weekend. We start on a Friday evening and we finish on Sunday around noon. And we come together in different tracks. So we have an animal science track, we have a computer science track, and we've had a healthy living track, mostly focused on nutrition and physical activity. We've focused on the Choose Health, Food, Fun, and Fitness curriculum for several years. And this year I thought, let's do something different and bring the social emotional health aspect into it, not knowing how important it was going to turn out to be a month after we had had our Teens as Teachers weekend, when everybody went home and was kind of stuck there and looking for ways to sort of cope with all that was happening in the world. So 2 of the curriculums that we used with a group of about 25 youth were GEM from Delaware, so getting experience in mindfulness, and we paired that with the Mindful Me curriculum, which is out of California. So the GEM curriculum is intended for high school age youth, and the Mindful Me is intended for 5 to 7-year-olds. So mini 4-Hers, clover buds, whatever it is that you call them in your community. So some of the lessons that are in GEM are listed to the right of the cover of the curriculum there. So we had intentions and goal setting that we started out with, awareness and attention, where we did the mindfulness jars. So we all created mindfulness jars. We had self-care, communication, relationships, and then ended the day with gratitude and acceptance. But one of the really interesting parts of GEM is that it does pair yoga movements with all of these lessons. And we were lucky enough to have one of our local county educators who is a certified yoga teacher. And so she was able to bring a team of youth and helped me lead this session. And so she was the one who really taught how to do the poses and how to do them in an appropriate way so that people were being safe. And the kids seemed to really, really like that, the curriculum as a whole. The interesting part of the Mindful Me curriculum, if you haven't seen it, is that there is a specific Teens as Teachers training program in there. It's pretty short, but it does walk teens through how to implement this program with younger kids. So each one of the lessons has an awesome book that goes with it. So the one that we did specifically with the teens was the, I need to move my pictures of all of you to the side because I can't see my screen. We did the mindful eating lesson with apples. So we read the book. They all participated as if they were 5 to 7-year-olds and followed all the directions. And they were amazed at how awesome that apple tasted when they really focused on, smelling it, holding it, listening to it, which sounds kind of strange, but little kids really like that portion of it. And then really eating the apple together. We also did a listening walk around the camp that we were at. It was a beautiful, beautiful day in February. So we were able to go out on a listening walk, and we sat in different areas of the camp and wrote down what we heard. So 5 things that they could hear. And then we moved to a different location and we wrote down 5 things we could smell, 5 things that we could touch. And so that was a really interesting activity that we did as well. So very jam-packed weekend full of teaching these teens how to take the information back to their own communities and share, whether it's with adults or with their peers or even younger kids. Another lesson that we've done quite frequently, we did this with youth and adults at our leadership summit that we had last fall, and people were really amazed at their wellness wheel once they had created it. So we walked through it. Teens guided the whole group through this lesson. So they answered, they didn't answer, they colored in the sections as they went through spiritual, emotional, and all the different areas. An interesting thing that our county educator has done with this particular program is she found small beach balls with the striped sections on them, and she blew one of them up fully, and she left one a little bit deflated. And when you roll the two, you can kind of see where your wellness wheel might be imbalanced. And I just thought that was an amazing image. I'm a very visual person, and that really struck me, that when your wheel is not balanced, you can't get from point A to point B as easily as if it is balanced. So I just thought I would share that with you. I think that's a really great way of highlighting the wellness wheel. And then I'm hoping this will work. This is one of our teen teachers. Her name is Cassie. And over the course of the time that we've been working from home and that she's been out of school, she decided to do a video about bunny breaths, which is one of the lessons that is in the gym curriculum. And it just highlights how you can use breathing to sort of calm and recenter yourself. And she shared this with us, and we were able to put this on social media. And so let me see if I can play this. It's very short. It's only like 30 seconds. So let's see what happens here. Whoops, maybe it's not going to work. There we go.
Doesn't sound like the audio is playing through.
Well, shoot. I will try to put the link in the chat when I'm finished so that you can listen to that. It's basically, her name is Cassie, and she brought her own bunny with her, her bunny Ollie, so that she can demonstrate how to do bunny breaths in order to, again, center yourself. And I just thought that was so sweet that she had brought her own bunny along to do that. And it was her idea to do this video and share, because she had felt like bunny breaths had helped her through some difficult times. And so we shared that widely in our social media, as well as the county educator, who is her team leader, did weekly yoga sessions. And so she presented those as Facebook Lives, and we were able to post those, and many people were able to get some really good information, not just about yoga, but about being mindful and working through some of the difficulties and stress that we all are going through now. Here's my contact information. I did also want to mention that we do have a group of youth who are not teen teachers, but they did attend the National Summit on Healthy Living, not this past March, but last year in March. And they have continued to work on their action plan that they entitled Self-Serve. And so basically what they wanted to do is they wanted to create information that would help youth who were in transition, either from high school to their first career or high school to college. And so they've worked on simple recipes that can be made. They've worked on how to incorporate physical activity into a busy schedule and demonstrated some quick exercise routines that can be done. And then they've also done nutrition lessons to go along with those recipes that they came up with. And so they're really kind of tackling all the areas that we might not think about when we're thinking about transitioning into a very different phase of life for people who are around 17 to 24. So that's been really interesting as well. Purdue Extension Jackson County is where you can find some of those videos that they've all done from their homes, because we can't all be together. So we just are continuing to work on mental health. I am also a mental health first aid trainer. So we're trying to bring that information to our county educators as well. So it's a new area for me. I've spent lots of time trying to learn what's new, what's out there, maybe what we're missing, and really trying to get that message to both our youth and adults. So I am happy to answer questions. Feel free to contact me if you have any. And I really thank you for this opportunity to share what we're doing at Purdue.
Thank you, Angie, very much. Appreciate that. Again, as we're listening to these things, feel free to write down questions that you'd like to be thinking about as we move into the chat rooms after our last group that will be presenting. So I see we have Dr. Lisa Diaz on, and if she would introduce her team that's going to present next.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to introduce our Illinois team who's sharing today. We have Alcha Corbin, Sherry Mary, and Susan Sloop, who are all 4-H educators, and Pat McLaughlin, who serves as a specialist in our state office, that are all part of a statewide committee that we have working on related issues, and delighted to have them here sharing today.
Okay, so it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you about our program today. I'm going to talk to you about a social and emotional development program that actually was piloted a couple of years ago, but we're on round 2 of it, and it was kind of based off of some of the research that was done by Dr. Dorothy S. Balazs from the University of Florida about peer mentoring being a key to even be able to address bullying issues and to be able to reach our youth in general. And so we determined to start this pilot program with a school that we are familiar with in our unit. And so basically is a peer mentoring program and a social emotional skill building program. We utilize the curriculum from Michigan State University, actually both of ours. One is Be Safe, and that is available, as well as the Ready to Go mentoring program. And both of them are from Michigan State, and I put in the links to that. What this is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the basics of it, and then tell you a little bit about how we structured the format. The training topics that we did to focus on was when we got the youth together, when talking to the school and setting up, branding was a big issue, and trying to help youth identify how they see themselves, as well as, within the family too. So the Be Safe curriculum actually, has some really unique activities in there, even just about your family name. And so we started out interjecting activities between the two curriculum so that we could follow a topic and a process. We also utilize the curriculum or actually the training assessment from National Curriculum Training Institute with the Real Colors program. And that was basically a format that we like to use a lot, to just gives a regular way and an identifiable way to be able to relate to other people and to increase self-awareness. So the colors is an easy way for youth to be able to relate to it, and it's something that we can educate with the entire school as well. We used the colors assessment to be able to talk about coping skills and other skills topics that are listed. We also inserted a lot for team building, and they had some great suggestions in the curriculum as well. Sometimes we use best practices of things in working with youth to be able to use some of the favorites that we have to really bond the group together. We found that team building was really essential, because if we're trying to get the youth together, they needed to really get to know each other too, in some lighthearted times too, as we were talking about other topics such as coping and personalities. And so it kind of balanced it out. So we found out that we really needed to interject that quite a bit. We did utilize some TED Talks, especially with emotional first aid, and be able to use some other resources if needed to be able to complement our program. Role models was a huge focus. One of the things that we talk about with role models in our group is to identify first who's a role model in your life as well. We also realize that there are negative and positive role models in our lives and we allow them to talk about that. One of the fact that it is a mentoring program, we want to highlight the fact that they are going to serve as role models, and we hope to be positive role models to other people. In the school that I worked with in particular for this pilot, really like to identify the term with difference makers as opposed to being a mentor. And the reason with that was just simply because they felt like mentor carried a heavier weight. But difference makers also kind of focused in on what they were really trying to do. And so I use that a little bit interchangeably, but it certainly is a part of our focus. As you can see, we also talked about other issues. Some of them are listed But that's the basic overall gist of our training topics. These topics were built in over a 4 training model sessions, and these training models were all day, depending on what the setup of the school preferred, but we chose to go all day to allow the youth to really be in the moment, stay in the moment, and to be able to relate to their peers as well. A lot of the training topics were done in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we additionally would have a discussion circle, and we would really sit in a circle and just discuss things. This was one of my favorite times too, because I like to watch the educational process, but the fact that they could get together and just freely, respectfully go through the process to where they are, you know, really dialoguing and sharing some of their input and the way they see things. I find that really invaluable. One of the things that the schools wanted to focus on that we found was really good is to be able to talk about, speaking of branding, you know, what is the branding of the school? How do you think people perceive you? What do you think that you represent, and what do we stand for, you know? And so it's utilizing the techniques of some of the skills that they learned, and then maybe trying to share their thoughts about what they learned later on. The principal did a wonderful job of coming in and trying to challenge them with different thoughts and different questions that they wanted to know about. And so we really found these discussion circles to be valuable, and it's something that I would definitely encourage, that kind of a setup. During these discussion circles, we also had a lot of discussions just randomly. We found out more about, it wasn't a parent bashing at all. It was just like, how do adults relate to me? How do other people relate to me? You know, where do I feel disconnected? And so there were lots of themes that we learned that took from that. Some of the challenge activities that we would maybe do is that, for example, with a mentor, we would have them go out and try to interview a person who made a difference to them, who is a mentor, so to speak, and find out if they had a mentor as well, and to try to find out where that circle can kind of go and lend its way to where they would be a good role model to other people too. And finally, another part of that was to discuss different things about the atmosphere of the interactions at the school, or even the climate, to determine what type of action steps needed to be taken. One of the things that I had really appreciated that a team member had stated is that it really opened my eyes when I realized that so many of my peers were experiencing or feeling the same pressures that I was feeling. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. And it meant so much to me to have these big conversations with people who were not really individuals that I normally did things with. But we have this in common. It changed my life, and I look at others in the school, and it just changed my life in general. So I really appreciate that. So I wanted to share that from this particular pilot, these are the 5 examples of some of the action outcomes that they worked on then for the remaining of the school year, and it kind of rolled into our second year, so to speak. One thing I would highlight, that the Gap with Parents, they would do an activity where they actually did a survey with the parents and had an evening discussion inviting parents in. So they each all had little action steps that they continue to work on as a result of this. From this, we saw 100% retention rate, and for us, with this being, I want to share some of the dynamics. It was all high school youth, and we would basically have freshmen through senior year be able to participate this. And so for a 100% retention rate for our youth was something that we felt was pretty good with that. So now to understand a little bit about the best practices of it, and I'll share the dynamics of the group a little bit. I believe it's really important to have school administration have those discussions, that everyone is on board with it. The fact that the principal was in the part of those discussions, and a guidance counselor is instrumental in being a part of all of these training sessions. And part of that is really important to be able to share with the school that this is something that the whole school buys into, and in being able to communicate with that with the students. It's also important for a time to be able to determine what are the best formats of doing it. If you can get a location off of school, which we did, it's a great way to be able to do that as well. And the nomination, I want to share a part with that. What we did to determine the students that we would get into, our goal was to have about 30 students. And the nomination process took place by either a self-nomination or by a nomination of someone else. And if they nominated someone else, they did need to put their names on it, as well as to say why they thought they would be a good nomination. Of course, the person can agree to participate or not, but sometimes it was a process of being able to get other groups in to make sure that all groups were represented in the school, that you had the band, you had people who were interested in science, and people who, you know, typically didn't interact a lot, all these groups to be able to have some representation. And from that, it was also then an internal thing, not a teacher appointed, not trying to just utilize people who automatically get leadership roles. We're trying to identify and seek out people who are good listeners and maybe have a good influence on other people. So that was a very important part of the process. A quick thing on logistics, and I know I want to be cognizant of our time, is that these are the examples of the role of the school. We did keep them in track of being able to nominate, to be able to set the location of everything. And I just really met with them a lot to be able to experience, you know, help them with this process. Our role with extension, I think the most important one is underlined. We do want to make sure that we institute that positive, safe, inclusive environment and all that we stand for with it. And so along with it, and it comes along with the suggestions from the Be Safe curriculum, that you know, have some guidelines along with that, and you post those guidelines. But I think it does create an environment for the students to be able to open up. We ended up with 37 students. We had to narrow it down because 75 people wanted to be a part of our first pilot. And so what we did is we instituted more the second year. And so we did have a good turnout from that. I do collaborate with the guidance counselor on a regular basis, and we do try to ensure that the program runs smoothly, and we're also providing feedback in between sessions so that we can try to modify if we need to. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions or anything else, feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Thank you so very much. We're going to go ahead and break into our breakout rooms for some discussions. And so I'm just getting that set up right now. And we'll let everybody go here in 3, 2, 1, and we're opening all the rooms. So encourage you to jump in and ask some processing questions about our topics today. Welcome back, everybody. So again, in the spirit of just kind of doing some last closing comments, I know we're at the top of the hour here. For those who need to head out, appreciate your time, and we'll definitely send out a link to all the program leaders, and we'll share with your whole system regarding an archive of all the resources that were shared today, as well as this video. But just wanted to give just some brief moments for anybody to share some closing comments or some either some questions you'd like to pose or just reflections from your group conversation. So I'll just open it up. Feel free to either write some questions in the chat box or unmute yourself and share with the group. So any comments from your discussions? Things you discovered? Otherwise, I'll call on Jill because I know you all have stuff good to share.
Our room had a great conversation about some of the things that we've experienced through virtual meetings and how reaching kids has been different that way. And one thing I did mention is that with the Get Experience and Mindfulness, the GEM curriculum, that's one that Kansas 4-H has been using. And we have a statewide, it's primarily through social media, and we also have them posted on YouTube. But there's using that curriculum with some of our 4-H youth, having a recent alumna who works with it, one of our 4-Hers over, we recorded them over Zoom, and then they're posted as really short, less than 3-minute segments that families can utilize. And those are posted every Monday. So there's the 4-H Youth Edition, as well as some for early childhood, family activities, and just individuals to be able to watch those. So Mindful Monday, and then there's also an extra one today. So the youth ones tend to be Monday and Friday when we use those. So today is a body scan, but we also have videos of, we do have the bunny breath and the breathing exercises, as well as the 5 senses and some of the others from that curriculum. So that's been a really neat way to share, just giving some ideas on mindfulness and reducing stress.
Great, thanks, Jill. Any other comments or reflections from your group that you just wanted to share with the group?
This is Dee from Wisconsin. I put 2 things in chat, and they're really more needs than suggestions. And one of them is that I need a curriculum that's accessible for volunteers to kind of give them a really basic mental health first aid, but not quite as even rigorous as that, but something that gives them some grounding. We're going to be required by our university to have something. So I wanted to know if there's anything anybody's using. And second, I was talking with my staff yesterday and realized that while I might talk about trauma and things like that with comfort, they're very uncomfortable thinking and talking and moving in a mental health space. And so they don't have the right language, they don't have the skill set, they don't have the recall of tools and videos that most of us probably have to use at our disposal. So what are you all doing to equip your staffs? Those would be my 2 questions.
I think we were talking in our group, Linda was bringing up that I think the awareness definitely at least in our rural settings, with the ag economy and others have highlighted, and this was before COVID, but was highlighting the stress that was happening with our agriculturally based families, and then our community families as a whole. And so I think there's been we were commenting on a heightened awareness, that I think is helpful to at least put people in a position to be more apt to learn, and to be receptive to resources going forward. So again, it doesn't answer Dee's question, but as much as I think there's, at least I'm perceiving in our state, that there's a growing intentionality in raising awareness so that people can be put in a position to help them move forward.
And thanks for the comments. Sorry, somebody was talking.
Nope, go for it.
I was just saying, I'm happy to see that other people are thinking about it and planning on it too. Just so that, we talked last couple of times on these meetings about the fact that we can do some coordination and maybe work together to develop something that works for extension populations. And so, I'd be really interested in doing that if there's a team of people that wants to sort of look at what we need to work on.
Wade, if I can add something. This is Joanne
Please.
from National 4-H Council, and I've been excited to be a fly on the wall during your conversation.
So glad you could join us.
Yeah, I posted in chat. Alaska has been using a relatively inexpensive training called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer, with their staff. It's $30 for an online course, and I posted that URL in the chat if anyone wants to follow through on that. Candy Deerenfield from Alaska brought that to my attention as what they've been using in Alaska. So I'll pass that on.
Also, many local mental health and recovery services boards have trainers, in QPR that will come and offer free or low-cost trainings to individuals in that. In Ohio, we are currently working with the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation. They're not able to train instructors virtually, so we're waiting until our group size restrictions are lifted, but they are going to be offering free trainings for our extension professionals so that we can be embedded in communities to help them as well. So not only will we be able to teach our volunteers, but we'll also be able to teach extension professionals and then our communities. And it's an hour and a half training that's really good. And then we're also doing trauma-informed care approaches with our Ohio Mental Health and Recovery Services boards. That one is one that we have been given permission to do virtual training. So if anybody is interested in that, I'm the point person, and I would be happy to train you all to be facilitators. If anybody wants to be a facilitator, if you have permission, I'm sure I can get permission for you to use OMOS's things, or you might want to reach out to your local state, your local and or state mental health and recovery services boards and see if they have a trauma-informed approach curriculum that's specific to you all. Obviously the material is the same, but the resources would be different that you would be able to become trainers in and then offer it. We actually have 51 Ohio. We have 7 instructors right now. We have 51 people doing virtual trainings in the next 4 weeks. So pretty exciting. In that response. And that training then can be anywhere from a 1 to a 4-hour training later on, depending on what your community needs.
Well, I think everybody here would love that. And so, you know, Jamie, if you could just write a short little blurb on that, I'd love to put that with the archive as we put this together for the future. And obviously make sure to have your contact information too, but it seems like there's at least those who remain are very interested in that. So sign us up for that for sure. Any other last comments? Otherwise, I'll wrap up our time here. 12:15 was when I wanted to honor our time, but appreciate everybody.
This is Teresa in Ohio.
Yeah.
I shared because it was in our small group, but it went into the larger chat and it will look like, what is that? It's the name of a book and an author, The Worst Hard Time by Timothy Egan. I don't know if any of you have seen this. 2006 is the date on it. It's a book about the Dust Bowl. And the reason I read it, I just finished it last week because I've been trying to think about other times in our country's history when we have been challenged with disasters, whether they're natural, but prolonged disasters. You know, a natural disaster like a tornado is one thing, not to minimize tornadoes, but the Dust Bowl, which I knew about, but not just the personal and environmental devastation that, so a lot of things in our history we weren't taught, maybe to the extent that we should have been to understand them. So that's helping me to kind of contextualize the current situation so that's why that's in there. And now I'm reading The Children of the Great Depression, another uplifting book, which is much more academic, to contextualize other times in our history when we've faced some similar challenges. But to me, it boils down to the same kinds of, even though the challenge is different, in many respects, it's the same in terms of resilience and coping skills that are needed to preserve our mental wellness.
And this is Kat. I was in that group with Teresa, and just touching on some of the things related to, it's kind of like the isolation that people feel. And even though our teams are connected virtually, there's still that sense of isolation that's kind of pressing to them. And I think all of us are feeling that a little. So, I mean, we did have a really good discussion about that. And so I think there's some good information to explore there.
The other thing that I brought up was people, as states' economies are beginning to open, and there are supposed to be restrictions or guidelines that are in place to still protect us from a virus that hasn't gone away, that some of our professionals, and then maybe in turn our volunteers and youth, may experience negative reactions from people when they're trying to follow the guidelines, when they're the only person in a meeting who's practicing them, even when the health department director is in the same meeting. So just sort of some of the toll that that takes on someone, like it's wearing them down. They're like, yeah, it's just, I'm not experiencing that. I'm not out in a county. Well, I'm at home now, but I'm a state level person. But just, I just hear that what they're saying, and I'm like, I can't believe that I can't believe people. But so there's that kind of fallout from the current situation that has taking a toll on our professionals as well as and we're trying to teach our young people to be role models, to follow these kinds of guidelines, and yet they may face pushback and disdain from people in their community if they do so. So
Right.
I don't know where to go with that, but it's just a reality of the current situation.
It really is. Well, I want to bring our time to a close, but I wanted to say thank you to our presenters today. Thank you for those of you who have stayed a little longer, and you get extra credit for being here, and appreciate all your efforts. Thank you so very much. Just as Teresa, I mean, for all of your efforts. I just want to say I'm so very thankful for the ways in which you are demonstrating each and every day to continue to be engaged, to continue to pursue what, when we know better, we do better. And then to invite in a spirit of generosity, others to continue to learn with us as we try and make sense of these days. And the beauty of what we do in our mission, and that's what I want to end on, is that we continue to, pursue our ideal because we truly believe in youth development. We believe in the power of young people. And we believe that even in the midst of challenging times, young people are being crafted and, put together in a way that there is tremendous value. There's tremendous value for our present. And obviously, as we talk about investing in our future, value for our future. So I want to say, on behalf of our organization and behalf of our movement, thank you all for continuing to invest your time, your energies, your careers, your passions into this extension work and helping equip the next generation of our leaders to continue to tackle the challenging issues of our day and continue to cast that vision for a more hopeful tomorrow. So go do great work and have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you all real soon. Take care.